That's when stress comes in. And one of my expertise is in stress and literally physiologically what happens to you with stress. But let me go back. Actually, I don't know why that happened. Okay. We're going the wrong direction. So we're going to start with that right now. And then I'll give you a little intro about myself. We're going to talk about what actually core energy leadership is and how it's used in coaching. And then we'll talk about a couple of different practices that you can use. So first, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes or take a soft gaze and just kind of land yourself where you are right now. It seems like many of us are on the East Coast, so we've gone through our day. We're getting ready to settle into our evening. And we're going to think about our breath in 3 different ways. So the first way we're going to inhale is thinking about the length of our breath. So really starting at the belly, low belly, and inhaling through the nose. And as you inhale, think about the breath going all the way up to the top of your head. And notice if you then shift into kind of a longer spine. And then maintain that length in your spine as you exhale out. So let's try that again. Inhaling from the base of your spine, your low belly, all the way up to the top of your head. Maintaining that internal shaping as you exhale out. And now we're going to shift our awareness to the width of our breath. So if you want, you can put your hands on the side of your rib cage and really think about inhaling into those hands, into the width of your rib cage, expanding there, and then keeping that expansion as you exhale coming in. We're going to do that one more time, and this time as you inhale, allowing the rib cage to open. You can even expand your arms out, taking up the space of your wingspan, and then as you exhale, letting the hands just come back down. And then the last way we're going to think about is depth. So if you want to put one hand on your chest and one hand on your back, or if you're up against a wall or a chair, you can feel the back of your back against the chair. And we're going to think about inhaling equally forward and back in our rib cage. So really getting the depth, and then exhaling, coming back in. One more time like that. Inhale. And exhale, letting your hands come down. And now we're going to put all 3 of those together. So really getting this 360 breath of length, width, and depth. And then maintaining that internal shaping as you exhale everything out. So we're going to do this twice through. So we begin by inhaling, thinking about the length, continuing to the width, expanding even more to the depth. Maintain that internal shaping as you exhale everything out. And one more time, inhale, length, width, and depth. And then exhaling, depth, width, and length. And then just take a quiet moment to settle in and see and feel and observe any shifts. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they were closed, bring yourself back to the space here. And I'll talk a little bit about why we do length, width, and depth a little later. It's really a somatic breath practice, and I'll talk a little bit about what somatics is tonight, but I'm not going into a huge depth. It could be a whole different workshop. But before we go, I would love for you in the chat to write what's an intention that you have for tonight. Just to get a little bit of clarity, to know what it is that you're hoping for. Unwind and relax. That's great. I'll share that my intention is to be able to hopefully clearly and articulate these different concepts in a way that allows you to have at least one thing that you leave tonight with being like, all right, I'm going to try to put that into practice. I'm really about taking things and how can we integrate them and put into practice. So learn something I can use to help me gain new perspective, learn tools to stay in motion and in the creative flow, finishing up on some work and catch up on a few things, right? And then leave the comfort zone. Awesome. These are all really great. I know there'll be time for some question and answer at the end, but if there is something that comes up in the moment, feel free to put it in the chat and we can, I can either get to it in the moment or be like, hey, we're going to get to that later. So now we'll learn a little bit more about me. So those of you who joined at the beginning of the call, I mentioned that I'm a dancer. I come to this work as a dancer, performer, choreographer. One of the things I loved about meeting Andrea in Creative Co is, and she was like, we all have a bunch of labels and we don't try to be one thing. And I was like, yes, you're speaking my language. My whole life, people being like, I think you need to narrow down and focus. And I'm like, no, that doesn't feel right. And so I am an artist, a performer, director, choreographer. I studied dance at Smith College for my MFA in dance performance and choreography. I started a dance company called Reject Dance Theater. I also do musical theater. So I kind of grew up with both the contemporary modern side of things as well as the musical theater side of things. I'm also an educator. So I actually developed the dance program at an independent private school here in New York City. And this is my 8th year there. So I created their program from 6th grade to 12th grade, as well as do their musicals. I also teach at John Jay College. I teach stress management and yoga there. And I'm also a yogi myself, teaching that. And I've taught in multiple different places, in multiple different countries, everything ranging from dance, musical theater, coaching, stress management, somatics, all of that. And then I'm a coach and a consultant and a speaker. So most recently, a couple of years ago, went back to grad school at Teachers College, Columbia University, and got a Master's of Arts in clinical psychology with an emphasis in spirituality, mind, body, as well as working a lot with the Adult Learning and Leadership program there and Org Psych program. Did a deep dive into stress management and burnout and what that looks like and how that affects employee engagement, how that affects company culture, leadership, peak performance, transitions. You'll see embodied leadership is something I'm really interested and an expert in, coming from my somatic experience and work there, of really getting people to be in their bodies as leaders and not just in their heads. And then I'm a certified professional coach through IPEC, and their model is the Core Energy Leadership Model, which is what we're going to talk about today. Great. So what is energy leadership? So energy leadership is a framework that was created by the founder of IPEC, Bruce Snyder. If the word energy, you're having kind of some, I don't know if that really works for me sort of thing, great. Take the word energy out and put in perspective, put in lens, put in viewpoint, whatever that is, it's the same, right? In terms of actual energy and the way that our system is, we have two things, catabolic energy and anabolic energy. And these were not made up by Bruce. These are literal, like, scientific, physiological things. So when you go through a stress reaction, you have that perceived threat. And I say perceived because what may seem threatening today may not tomorrow, based on how much sleep you got or what mindset you're in. And we can always shift our relationship with stress by shifting our perspective on what this perceived threat is. But when that happens, so we perceive a threat, our brain, our amygdala, literally flies off the handle. It triggers the hippocampus and the nervous system to go, okay, shut down the system. And catabolic energy and catabolic hormones are released. So our cortisol, our adrenaline, all of that, so that we can tear everything down and just focus on getting to safety. And that may be running away, flight, that may be freezing, or that may be fighting back, right? And in that moment, we just have a tunnel vision of gotta get to safety, gotta get to safety, gotta get to safety. Once we feel safe, we usually release that energy, right? And then some of the anabolic energy can come, which is the energy that is building up, that is more constructive. And when we're in that energy state or those lenses, we see many more opportunities, we see possibility and all of that. So you may be noticing as I'm saying this, like, oh yeah, when I'm really stressed, I only think about that one thing, and like I can't figure out the answer. I can't solve anything. And it just physically becomes really heavy and weighted. And then your back hurts and you get a headache. And all of those things are the output of a stress reaction, what we call the strain. And so things in order to get the hormones and like complete the stress reaction in our body, that's where things like going for a run, going for a walk, crying, screaming into a pillow, doing something creative helps to release all of that so that you can get back on track. What we're going to learn about today is this spectrum of the different energies, or like I said, different perspectives. There are 7 of them. They are not related to those of us that may know the chakra system. They are not technically related to the chakra system, though there is some overlap you may see. And what's really wonderful about this framework is, like I say here, it empowers us to be more conscious of how we're showing up in all areas of our lives and how we're using these different energies. Because at the end of the day, we are using them. And instead of having them dictate us, when we get more clarity around them and understand them, we get to choose which ones we want to step into. And here's where I talk about energy is neither bad nor good. Catabolic energy is not bad energy. Anabolic is not good energy. Anabolic energy tends to have more freedom to it, though there are moments where if you're only in anabolic energy, like when you're only in level 6 energy, that can be detrimental. The same way as in catabolic energy, which is mostly level 1 and 2, there are moments where it is very necessary for you to be in level 2 in order to move forward. And that by not being in level 2, it may actually bring you back, right? So they're neither good nor bad, right or wrong. It's about being more clear so that you can choose which energy you want to use to show up in whatever relationship or situation or experience you're in. So one of the ways that we can measure where people are currently is through something called the ELI, the Energy Leadership Index Assessment. And it's like a 20-minute online thing you do, and then it shows you how you're using all the different levels. And you're not just using one level at one time, it's a mixture of them. Though we each have a dominant one that we use on our everyday lives. So it may be like, oh, like for me, my level 4 is my highest, and then I'm tied level 6. Or actually, no, that's not true. I'm tied level 4 and 6. I think my 5 is like my secondary. And then the ELI tells you what becomes your dominant in a stress reaction, which I think is super interesting because on an everyday level, we might be working here, but as soon as we get triggered into our stress reaction, we drop down into what is the bottom chart that you would then see in a debrief. And the amount of time you stay in that chart, in that bottom chart, is totally dependent on whether you've experienced that stressor before, what else is going on in your life, how big the stressor is. But once you feel like you can move through it, you jump back up to that top one. So that is the service that I actually offer, is a whole energy leadership, taking the energy leadership index and then having a debrief with me on what it is and how it shows up. So today you're going to get a preview of all of these levels so that you can already start to see like, oh, I think I hang out in this one a lot, or, ooh, I'd really like to go into that one. So let's get into that now. Here we go. So with each of these levels, we have a core thought, a core emotion, and a core action and result. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. Just moving some things around. Here we go. So when we think about humans and how we do things, sometimes we have a thought, which then goes, oh, I'm going to do this action, right? And then it leads to maybe some sort of awareness or emotion, and we have some sort of sensation. And then we're like, that didn't quite work. Let me try something else. And then a thought. And it becomes this like loop that we keep going forward and back, right? So if we want to make a shift in our life, we can do that in multiple ways. We can either change our thoughts, which is going to change our emotions and our action. We could understand the emotion that's happening there, get curious about the emotion, get clear about it, shift the emotion, which is then going to shift the thought and the action. Or we can change a different action, right? We could take a different action and see what that does. So there's so many entry points here. It's not just one way. So level 1, this is our lowest level of energy, and it's the highest catabolic energy. And this is known as the victim energy, right? And one of the things I'll say about this is these energies can be both internal and external. So they can show up in a very internal way. It can also show up in a way that you project to other people. Um, what also is really fascinating about all of this is the more that you learn about it and you understand yourself, it actually allows you to understand other people. And you can be like, whoa, okay, that person is coming from level 2. It really has nothing to do with me. And I don't want to meet them at level 2. I'm going to meet them at a level 5, right? Which will make more sense when we get there. So, level 1, victim energy. The core thought is this idea of like, I lose. I'm always losing. I hate myself. I'm such a loser. Why does nothing ever go right for me? Blah, 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 blah. The core emotion, apathy. There's some guilt there, maybe some shame, embarrassment, worry, fear, self-doubt. And then that action or result turns into like lethargy, this hopelessness, this anxiety, the low self-esteem, the internal focus, both mentally and emotionally, and is just exhausting, right? So where level 1 shows up for me a lot, I'm going to give examples of all of these, is me sending an email and not getting a response in the timely manner I was hoping for a response, usually something that I'm really excited about or nervous about, and then going back and reading the email 100 times, being like, oh my God, it's because of this word that they're not responding back to. I shouldn't have said that word. Why did I say that word? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then I need to take a nap because I've exhausted myself. So that's how level 1 shows up for me a lot of times, right? So that can be really detrimental because now I'm just worrying over and over about this stupid email that really and this one word on an email, right? And it's producing all this anxiety. Where it can be really helpful is something happens in your life and you're feeling really low self-esteem, you're feeling really worried, you're in a lot of fear. And usually when we're in that closed down place, that's when our team usually comes around and is like, hey, Stephanie, is everything okay? Do you want to talk, right? And then, so it can help us to connect to other people, right? And that's one of the best ways to try to get out of level 1. Then we move over here to level 2. Level 2 is the next step up. It's still really high in catabolic energy. It's known as conflict. So it's this idea of instead of I never win, I never win. In this one, it's no, I'm going to make sure I win. And the way I'm going to win is because you need to lose. And I'm going to blame you, where level 1 is blaming yourself a lot. Level 2 is oh, well, it's because so-and-so doesn't get their stuff done that this is happening, or I can't trust this person, so I'll have to do it on my own, right? And so there's a lot of anger there. There's some resentment. This is where there's some greed and some blame and some hatred, which seems really extreme, but that's how they label it. But it's kind of this idea of gosh, everyone on my team is incompetent. I have to do all of this and I'm so frustrated about it. But you know what? I need to get these numbers and I need to win, so I'm going to do this. A lot of people are really productive in this space. It is where stress is when people say I work well under pressure and I work well under stress, this is level 2. And yeah, you can get a lot done in level 2, but you can't sustain it. You literally cannot sustain it. And when we think about company culture and we look at burnout, which is right now a huge issue and has been for the last 5 or 6 years, so much that the World Health Organization has said in the US that this is a problem. It is because so many company culture is around fear and blaming, throwing people under the bus, lack of transparency, territorialness, all of that. And after a while, people just can't handle that anymore, and they can't function, right? And so they burn out. And we can talk, stress is a whole nother thing, but we can talk about how that creates a lot of illness and disease if you're not managing stress correctly. This is where there's a lot of challenges with leaders who are not trained to be good leaders, right? Or effective leaders, right? Is that they lead by the way that they were taught, which I'm going to take, and it doesn't sound like anyone specifically in finance, but this is a big issue in finance, right? Where people are well, this is how my boss treated me, so this is how I'm going to do it, right? And this is how I learned it. And so then we're just repeating the same thing over and over again. So that's level 2. Now, where level two can actually be real, yes, Wolf of Wall Street, totally. Where level two can be really helpful is people who are stuck in level one, and they need to actually kind of light that fire in them to be like, you know what? I do deserve to sit at that table and I do deserve to say what I want to say. Now, maybe just yelling at somebody what they want is probably not the way to get it. So, like, what if they took level two and they paired it with level five? And you'll see what that is when we get there. And they have their internal level two of like, got this fire. I got to fight for myself, but I'm going to do it in an outward way where I'm creating a win-win situation. And so everyone can be part of this. So that's where it can, like, when we start coupling these things, it can really be powerful. Now we get into level three, which is really interesting because it's really the bridge. There's some catabolic energy there, but it's mostly anabolic. So it's really that bridge to get over to the anabolic states. And here's where we talk about responsibility. So this person, when you're in level three, you're really like, yep, I want to win. And then you win too. I forgive you. These people are really good at coping. They're really good at like understanding that level one and level two is there and being like, it's okay. I'm going to do my breath technique. I understand that Susie over there is not maybe the easiest to work with, but I'm going to eye on the prize. We got to get this goal and we're going to work together and figure it out. Managers are really high in level three. Effective managers are really high in level three because they're able to put differences aside and be like, okay, you're really good at this, do that. You're really good at this, do that. I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. Go team, get this done. So when we are consciously using our level three, it's actually really good. Where level three can be detrimental is people here can kind of justify and rationalize that things are just good enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stay at this job because like I have health insurance and I'm making good money. Yeah, no, they totally like don't value me, but it's like good enough, right? And so they're stuck. They stay in that place, right? So that's where level three comes in. Level four. Level four is higher in anabolic energy. It's all about concern. It's all about compassion. It's like, you win. I don't need to win. You win. I love you. Like, let me help you fix your problem. Let me, you need someone to listen. I'm going to listen to you. What if you tried this? Like, oh yes. Like, no, I do. I love you, but there's some conditions around there. This is where compassion fatigue comes in when in a disadvantage. So here's where it's our health workers, it's our teachers, it's our parents, it's a lot of moms, it's a lot of not to gender things, but it tends to be where a lot of females lie, right? Of like, let me fix, let me help, let me that. However, it does show up in males too with the whole fixing thing, right? Of like, let me try to fix this. Let me try to fix this, right? It's being of service. These people don't really take things personally except when they're not acknowledging level one and level two and they're not creating boundaries. Now, I have a lot of experience with level four because if there's anything in my life's work that the universe is making me figure out over and over again is boundaries, right? And so level four is all about healthy boundaries so that you don't get pulled into level one and level two. And it's about self-care. So a lot of times when I'm working with people who have a really high level four, I ask them, how can you show that level four to yourself? When do you win? Like when you win, it that comes back towards you and not out, right? Because what happens sometimes with level four is you're giving, and then you're not being recognized. So then you get overwhelmed because you're giving so much, you get overwhelmed, and then you get angry and resentful that those people are not recognizing you for all that you've been giving. Also, level four people sometimes have a hard time accepting the help from other people, right? So where can you show a little of your level one so that others can help you, and how can you accept that help? Michelle's like, that's me. Right? So really powerful. Like it is some of the best leaders have really strong level four, but it's not their dominant one. Instead, Their dominant one might be level 5. Level 5, a little more mental in the level 4, very heart and emotional. 5, a little more mental. This is a we both win, right? So remember when I was talking about how level 2 can be really helpful for someone who needs to like feel their voice and like advocate for themselves and get that, like, this is where like the yogi in me comes in and is like, yeah, level 2 is that like third chakra almost of like, okay, where's that fire? How can I do that? Yet, how can I put it out to the world in a we both win sort of proposition? So, level 1, I never win. I always lose. I'm such a loser. Level 2, oh, I'm going to win because I'm going to make sure I win. I'm going to hold on and I'm going to get that win. Level 3 is like, no, I'm going to win because we're going to get an A on this project, and I'm going to tell everybody what they need to do so we can get an A in that project and manage the situation. Level 4 is like, I don't need to win, you win. You win, that's great. Level 5 is we both win. We're going to find the opportunity in this situation. It's all about opportunity. So instead of it being a problem we have to solve or an issue or a challenge, it's cool. What's the opportunity here? These people come from a really peaceful, calm confidence. They're making meaning out of things. Like, oh, what does this mean? What am I learning from this? Like, a failure isn't a failure. It's an opportunity to learn and grow. Like, what does this mean? Oh, okay, yeah. And they find a lot of fulfillment in life, and they're accepting of people. And the focus is on the us, on the, like, what can we do together? Where this can be problematic is they see opportunity everywhere. And so then it becomes paralysis by analysis of like, oh, but there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then, oh my God, I can't do anything, right? So then maybe they need to kind of get their manager, their level 3 involved to be like, okay, where are we focusing? Level 6, high anabolic. This is all about synthesis. This is like flow. Like if you're familiar with flow, Mahali Csikszentmihalyi, this is where flow lives. It is like we are all one. You are me, I am you. Like we are all flowing together. There's joy. I'm in this like fearless place. Everyone is always winning. Like it doesn't have to be right at the same time, but we're all always winning. And like I'm going to tap into my intuition and I'm going to create. This is where creation is, right? A lot of wisdom, and they're not actually trying to find meaning in the moment because they're in the moment. They're just being. They're in the moment, they're being, they're in flow. Where this can be detrimental, or not detrimental, the disadvantage I would say is that these people, if you're only in level 6 so much, it almost is like you're floating. You're kind of just like all over the place, which is going to make sense for the next thing I talk about. That's a little more practical, but they may be just kind of visionaries floating everywhere, and so they need a little more groundedness. Then level 7 is like the highest level, and this is like you tapping into your highest self, your highest coach. There's no winning and losing because everything is an illusion. Yes, this is the edible. This really is. This is where that is, right? There's no judgment, literal no judgment. It's just I am. Like what? Like well, I don't even know why we're getting stressed out about this. It doesn't exist. Like I sometimes think to myself all the time, I'm like, why am I stressed out about money? Money's not real. Like it literally isn't, right? Like we've made it real, but it really isn't real. So where level 7 could be a disadvantage is like we actually are living in an embodied experience, right? And I can't just be meditating all day. I mean, I guess I could, but like there has to be some sort of groundedness, right? So level 7 paired with all of these other ones makes for a really powerful place to be, right? Because you can have level 7 and level 1. I'm still trying to figure out where that is, but I think it can be like I can be in a really low mood and a heavy mood and be like, it's okay, Stephanie, be in this mood because I know that by going in this mood, I'm gonna get out of it. If I don't recognize that I need to be in this mood, then maybe I'm actually going to stay in it for a lot longer because I'm not recognizing it, right? So level 7, creation, absolute passion, love, unconditional love, everything. So level 7 with enough practice and intentional practice, you can tap into with any of these others. So I know in the interest of time, I'm going to go quickly through one other thing. I will make sure that you can get these slides so that you have all of this plus all the resources. 360 breathing. I'm just going to talk a little bit from a somatic experience what that was. So the length, that's your integrity, right? So as I was saying, inhale, keep that length. That's your backbone, your integrity. There's another saying of having a strong back, soft front, right? So keeping that strong spine, but keeping an open heart. The width, that's your relationship to others, right? So integrity, your relationship to yourself. Don't cave, don't make yourself smaller. Width, your relationship to others. Take up that space. Open through here. Keep your integrity as you relate to others. And then your depth is your relationship to time. So you may have noticed, oh, do I breathe a little forward more than I do stay in present, or am I a little more back? How can I stay in the present moment while I'm in relationship with others and maintain my integrity? So that's kind of how that all wraps in. And then the last thing I want to share with all of you is called the 4 energies of a balanced leader, Phoebe. This comes from the book Move to Greatness. And what I love about this book is you can take this assessment for free. You don't need to get a debrief from a trained person. This is not an IPEC thing. This is something else I learned that I've put together. And I also ended up, this comes full circle, Michelle, I also put them together with Laban movement analysis and the different Laban movement qualities. So this is where all my worlds come combined, right? So you can take on the Phoebe assessment, you can take that for free, and it will tell you which one of the 4 you gravitate to more. And their whole thing is that in order to be an effective leader, you have to balance these in different ways. So, and at the end of each chapter of these, they give you physical things to do to activate that energy quality, right? And you can notice that some of these energy qualities work really well with the IPEC model of energy leadership. So quickly, we have driver. Driver is heavy, strong, quick, sudden, like I need you to get this done, I need you to get that done, I need you to get that done. Could be a little bit of level 2, could be a little bit of level 3, right? Totally necessary to get things moving, but if you're doing driver all the time, you're gonna burn out, right? So I always think of driver as like this go, kind of like clap like that. Then you have the organizer. Again, strong and heavy quality, but a little more smooth and sustained, like a container, right? Again, this is definitely a level 3. It could also be a 4, like the caretaker holding the space for people, right? And so I'm holding this container. Collaborator is very much a level 5. It's lighter in energy. It's more smooth and sustained of like, hey, you come over here. You come over here. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you, right? Again, also maybe a level 4 is in there too of like, let me nurture, let me hold space, all of that. Then you have level visionary, very light and quick and sudden, like, oh, I have this idea, I have this idea, I have this idea, I have this idea. So that's like a level 6, right? And also a little bit of level 5. So you can notice that if you're only in the visionary, that's not going to be great. Like, let's balance that out with your organizer. How can you have this vision and do all of this? And then how can you balance that out with your organizer mentality? Maybe you need to add in some people and be a collaborator, and then you got to find the driver to get things going, right? So that's how that framework can work with the energy leadership system, where you can kind of tap into the energy leadership system of like, ooh, I'm really thinking about this in a level 2. I want to think about it more as a level 5. Okay, so what were some of those core thoughts in a level 5? Ooh, what's the opportunity here? And then ask yourself that question, and that can help get you out of level 2 or wherever you are. This really can help figuring out where you are on the spectrum and like physically what do you want to do to get to another one, right? What would serve me more here? Well, maybe I'm in driver so much, especially for creatives, like, oh my God, I'm in driver. I have to give this to a client and this is just not working. What is happening? Maybe you got to get up and get your visionary on and do a little shaking and like a little flicking, and there's some vocal exercises you can do, and then come back to it, and then you're like, oh, brilliant idea just came to my mind, right? So putting these both together can be really powerful, and being able to get yourself unstuck and consciously show up to yourself, to relationships, to clients, to projects, all of that. Um, and I will just say that understanding how our effort quality, the words we're saying, the gestures we're using, our tone, and our body engagement um, really is important in how we interact with other people, how we're collaborating with people, how we're putting ourselves out there, right? Just even on websites, like what words are we? I have shifted a lot of the language on my website to be way more level 5, instead of like I used to say like I used to use the word push somewhere, and I was like, no, that's not what I want, right? Like help people to push past their blah blah blah. And then I was like, no. I was like, I partner with people so that I can empower them to overcome, right? Like I don't want them to push anything. I want them to feel embodied and empowered to overcome stuff. So that was a lot, and I know we're pressed for time, so I will say that there's a bunch of resources here that when I will send the PDF of the slides, and you all can have that. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody. So I do believe we have some time for questions or just ahas or insights or anything that's come. I loved that people are putting stuff in the chat as well.
Bravo. Thank you so much. Like so many synchronicities.
You're welcome.
Loved it. Oh my gosh. It was so good. I feel completely more aware, because when you're living unconsciously and just not self-aware, it's so easy to get caught up in those different levels for too long and thinking like, well, this is just my personality, when
Mhm.
it's not. It's just your state of mind. And then if you stay stuck there, it can start to persuade you that's like, well, this is just who I am, and it's not necessarily. So
Yeah.
I love that. And also utilizing those different levels to our advantage, I think is so strategic and smart, because it's not good to just be one. You kind of have to utilize and be aware on like, okay, I need to be this one, and then focus, etc. Such a smart way to categorize everything. And honestly, I didn't know anything about this. First time, really surprised. I'd love to hear what anyone else has to say about it.
Yeah.
Jason?
Um, I have a question. From what I understand, if I drained all the blood out of my body and then filled it up with new blood, I would still my body would reject it. I can't change my blood type. So even though I can introduce an artificial state of being, it's temporary at best, and I am what I am. I wonder, as you studied this and gone through your motions and dealt with people, and from 1 through 7, I really wish there was an 8, but I'll get past that. But um, it is when you find people that are saying, "Boy, I'm a 1 or a 3 or a 5 or a 2," and put themselves into a being of another area that may be not endemic to their actual gestalt. Sorry to offend anybody, but if do you kind of come back to your set point, or can you actually make a sea change of your toolkit?
Yeah, great question, Jason. So, what's really wonderful about the Energy Leadership Index assessment is that it's not a personality test, right? So, it's not like Myers Briggs or something like that where you're your type and then, yeah, maybe you shift a little bit. This is an attitudinal test. Assessment. So when I work with clients, anybody who signs up with me to do a package, we start with this. We do a big debrief on it. In that debrief, first of all of the ways the energy shows up from you is all totally understandable and perfect for that person, and is going to be different because it's also based on your conditioning, your environment, how you grew up, where you grew up, like what messages were you taught, what were you holding on, what have you taught yourself, right? So it's all the way you're showing up in the world and how you're seeing the world, right? Like it's your lens, your perspective. you can shift lenses and perspective, like that you can shift, right? So then after working with each other, we get, well, in that debrief we get even clearer on like, okay, so where are the opportunities that you're seeing that you want to develop, right? And that gives us even more clarity on what it is we want to work on in your coaching sessions. And then it becomes like, how do we create these new behaviors and habits? How do we get into like, what is holding you back there? What is the gremlin that's coming up, that's holding you back? What's the limiting belief? What's the assumption you're making there? And how can we create a different story for you, one that you like? A lot of us feel like we're not good enough in certain things, right? So how can we, where's the basis and the proof of that, and what's a story you really want to tell your, so you can get clarity. So like, I'll have some clients who will say, and I'll say this too, like I've worked with coaches where I'm the client doing this. So when I saw that I was a level 4, I was actually really upset. I was like, no. But I wasn't surprised. I was like, of course, yeah, I'm exhausted. Like the amount of teaching I do, like all of that, like I'm exhausted. And I knew that I wanted to change, right? And so with my coach, it was how can I use my level 4 for myself? And how can I maintain my level 4, yet how can I be intentional about really shifting in my level 5 and my level 6, and having that bar on the scale get longer, right? And so things would shift. There are people who, and then you can take it again, right? So then after 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, you take it again, and then you can actually see how your intentional work is showing up, right? So really, to answer your question is yes, you can change the way your energy is, because you're changing your perspectives and you're actually changing the story that you have been telling yourself about the world and about yourself. One of the things we talk about in IPEC is like, what are the rules that you live by, and like, where did those come from? I'll tell you one. So like, I'm actually leaving my job at the school. And as I'm telling people about it, right, they're like, oh, where are you going? What school are you going to? And I'm like, I'm not. And their response all the time is like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm going to play around and figure it out. And, and I'm going to lean more into my coaching business, and I'm going to do that. And they're like, oh, wow, that sounds really risky. And I have to remind myself all the time to be like, that's their story. That's because it does trigger things in me, because yeah, I'm scared. I'm like, what? I'm both scared and excited and like inspired and all of that, and also terrified, right? And then reminding myself like, all of those can exist at the same time. Like, I'm a complex being. All of those can exist, and it's okay. And that's their story. And it used to be my story too, that like, yeah, I have to have a full-time job. And a lot of that is because, oh, I have to have health insurance. And you want to know where that story came from? My dad. Because my dad is always like, where's the health insurance? Or what's the benefits? He could care less what the job is I was ever applying for. The first thing out of his mouth was, what are the benefits? So much so that we say when he dies, that's going to be on his tombstone. What are the benefits? And so I had to work on, oh, that's his story. That's kind of the way our world works story, but that's not the story. What do I want my story to be?
I found, that when people talk about changing, and I think, I think you're right that every single one of those levels, I think, is accessible to everybody. That's not like blood type, right? I mean, I'm never going to play for the NBA. I'm 61 years old and I'm 4'10". That's just never going to happen. But I was actually, when I really started working on myself, I was really surprised at how many of the things that I thought were, that's me and that could never change, were completely open and susceptible to change. It's crazy hard work, but you can change like way more than you think you can. And I also think, though, that nobody actually changes. I think when we change, we're really going back to the person that we were before Stephanie's dad told us that benefits are the most important thing in the world. Right. I think that's it. It's like peeling off the layers and realizing that that's not really who I am. That's who I became because that's what I was told to do.
So Michelle, I love that you
Um,
said that because
so
what
yeah, that was really, that was an,
yeah, I love that you said that because what intuitively came to me when Jason asked that question and I was like, I'm going to give a little more pragmatic of an answer is we all come in as level 7.
mm,
We all come in as level 7. As babies, we are level 7. Like we are pure joy, we are pure unconditional love. Like we are like winning and losing is not a real thing. Like, like we are just there. We are pure joy, bliss, everything. As we get older and as we get conditioned by society, as Michelle said, all these layers start coming on.
mm,
And I believe that part of our work as we get older, and a lot of psychologists would believe that in the individuation process of development is you stopping and saying, what part of this is me and what part of this is what I was told, right? And how can uncondition? So, this idea of undoing, that we're really here to unlearn, undo, um, so that we can get back to who we are. And a lot of this, so I've been doing a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. I add in belonging because I think that's something that is missing, that you can create a diverse place, you can make it equitable, you can include people, but if they don't feel like they belong, none of the whole purpose of doing all of that is going to make any sense and it's not going to happen, right? So how can we really belong? And really it's about undoing the thing. Implicit bias is about undoing the implicit bias that you were taught, that you didn't even realize you were taught. And when you look at psychology and the research around it, our subconscious was built between the years of 0 and 7. And we didn't have a ton of autonomy at those ages, if you think about it. That's why when there's a lot of trauma, they call them ACEs now, and we all are really on that spectrum for ACEs. But like, that's where our fear lives, right? So our subconscious is our fear, and until we start realizing that, like, oh, that thing that and a lot of times it comes to the parents, and I love my parents, and they know all these stories, because is being able to realize, oh, my parents were doing that because that's how they showed me their love, because that's how they learned how to do this, right? I blamed my parents for a lot of things for a very long time, and it wasn't until I was like, oh wait, blaming them is level 2, and it's not helping anybody. It's making me angry, and I'm not moving forward. So how can I have more compassion for the fact that, like, they were doing the best they could with the knowledge that they had, and I don't have to actually keep that story that they were doing. I can decide on my own story, and I can break a cycle that maybe wasn't working.
my dad actually went through a huge amount of change starting in his late 40s. And he was the one who kind of gave me permission to let go of some of that stuff because he realized that he had given it to me and he wasn't having it anymore. So why the hell should I? So, yeah.
Yeah.
His mantra was be good, but not too good.
That's great.
That's actually the reason I asked the question, and you gave a great answer. Was I was level 1 and level 2 for about 30 years, 24 hours a day. I mean, and if you live like that for 30 years, what happens is you end up with a doctor staring at you saying you have about 15 seconds to live, which
Yep.
is where I was. And when you die, you can make a sea change very fast. And when I woke up with a new life, I can tell you what you're describing as 6 is the way I exist now, and it never would have happened. It's like when people get struck by lightning and their hair color changes. I don't. I am nearly impossible to. You just can't get me. I don't. You know, some people are quick to anger, quick to fight, blah blah blah. I don't fight. I don't flight. I just say, all right, yeah. Oh wow, there's an asteroid headed for the Earth. How about that? It's probably gonna change the weather. All right. Well, I guess we're not going to the beach. And people that are at different numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. It's hard to kind of relate sometimes to people whose mindset is so different. How could that person be so this, or how could that person be so that? But the way you process the information now. I always say when it's snowing, the guy that's selling snow shovels is really happy, but the guy that has to use the snow shovel is really not happy. The snow doesn't know the difference.
Mm.
And now, so that's what I look at everything from the snow's point of view. Now I need a nap. Now I said that I need a nap. I don't even know, so I might
Yeah,
actually be taking a nap right now. I don't even know if any of this is real.
yeah, Jason, you bring up a lot of really great points, and thank you for sharing that. And I think that's why I gravitated towards IPEC, was that I was just like, this is so important for people to know, because I don't want people to get to that point that they're staring at a doctor and all of that. It's one of the reasons I teach stress management to college students. Is I'm like, and they're like, wait a second, so this is because I'm stressed? And I'm like, yes. Like, your body in pain is not you injured, it's you like not taking care of yourself and acknowledging some of these things. And a lot of times it's acknowledging your emotion and the thoughts you're having and stuff, and how that's playing out. So it's really powerful stuff. There was such a quick way of introducing it to you. Bruce does have a book called Energy Leadership. It's a great book. And the last thing I'll say about this is, I do it with individuals, but it's also with groups, right? Like, there's an energy of a group, and you can actually do an ELI for a group and a team. You can look through the lens. So a lot of you being creatives and designers, like, you can use it as a way to be like, okay, so such and such, like, I know, Andrew, you were talking about a real estate company at the beginning, like, okay, what's your vibe, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so they want to be really like level 5. Then, like, what are the words that come out for level 5? Let's use that in the copy, versus, oh, it sounds really level 2, and that's why I don't get any clients, because energetically I'm putting out this like anger, or whatever it is, right? So it's really a framework you can adapt and use in a lot of different ways. And that book is a fun book because it's almost like a narrative. It's a case study. It's like a book long case study that he's working with a company, and he's working with the head of the company one-on-one, but then he starts working with some of the other people. And so he works with the whole company, and he brings them from being in the red to being incredibly profitable, with people who were like, he was going to fire people. He actually, I don't want to spoiler, but one of the people doesn't end up staying in the company, and yet the way in which their partnership ends comes from a way higher level than just like, I gotta fire you. And I'll say, leaving the job that I'm leaving, I came into this school year being like, I want to leave in a level 5 perspective and not a level 2, and did a lot of work on how can I do that, and was like really happy that when I was able to tell them, it came from a place of like, yeah, you always have a place here, and like actually being like, hey, we want you to stay on and do some coaching work. We'll figure out how that works with your schedule. Like, we value you a lot. Whereas like 3 years ago, I would have been leaving with a big F you, like, can't stand you, like, blah, blah, blah. But intentionally, I didn't want to be that way. So it's really powerful stuff. And I know we're at time now, so.
Thank you so much. That's very insightful. We're so lucky to have you and explain this. Thank you so much. I'm just beyond grateful. It was something I feel like I really needed to learn and start utilizing, and I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. So thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you all. And please reach out if you have any questions. I love talking about this stuff. So, and if I can support you or anybody please have them reach out to me as well.
Yeah. I posted your website link in the chats, so everybody check that out. But then I'll also email all the information, and also connect with Stephanie on LinkedIn and connect with her there too, and like her posts, and let's stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Lovely. Bye.